All right. Let's start out by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash.
All right.
Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Whose Habitation is High. And this is taken from the book of Obadiah, which is one chapter long in the scriptures. And pretty much, this is this lesson, which more than likely is going to be a short lesson because this is something I thought about earlier. Like a thought came to mind. And pretty much what I did was I typed a question in on Google, because I thought about the scripture here and I was just curious, as to the answer to it. But before we go to it, let's go to Obadiah. Let's read from the first verse. I'm just going to read kind of a little fast through it. And then when I get to the third verse, the point is in the third verse. That's where, the main topic is coming from. So Obadiah 1:1. Excuse me. The vision of Obadiah. Thus said the Lord power concerning Edom. So this book of Obadiah was a direct prophecy that was going directed towards Edom, or the Edomites specifically. It says, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador sent among the heathen. Arise ye and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. And this is not talking about small in number. This is talking about looked down upon. Thou art greatly despised. Pretty much these nations, when you really analyze, outside of them getting money from these devils, they really can't stand these devils. If it wasn't for making that money with them, they would have been forsook this place. This is why in the book of Revelation 17, it speaks about, those that committed fornication with the harlot, and I shalom to the elders and the Akim and the Akwath and the common board. On the common boards, the sincere ones. So it says, the pride of thine heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. And this is the main crux of the lesson. But it says, the pride of thine heart has deceived thee. And this is what these devils think, because another scripture says that, that the inward thought is that the houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. And they've been in power for so long that they really believe, that they'll never go down. Now they're right in thinking that they were set up, to be in the position that they are right now, to be in power right now, because that was commissioned by Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. They're supposed to be on top right now, but the Most High is not with them as far as them being the rightful rulers of the planet. They only ruling now because the last nation to rule would be the Edomites. And this is what these devils are trying to get away from. That's why they're trying to blanket statement say that the Edomites were done away with. So then that can just be erased from history, from the minds of the people, because most people will believe it because it's coming from Esau, and they're the ones that are the gatekeepers of plantation Christianity, which is nothing more than lightly veiled white supremacy. So it says, the pride of Nahar has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. And Esau has that shameful history of being cave dwellers. Now you had cave dwellers among the Hamites, the original inhabitants of Mount Seir and the land of Edom in that area were the Horites. Now the word Hor goes back to the Hebrew word Har, which means mountain or hill. So the original cave dwellers were Hamites, the Horites, but they were never in a condition and position that Esau was in, when they were grunting and, in a beastly like state. And that was a direct curse that was put on them, that was put on the serpent seed in the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter. So they have this history. And what's funny is when you try to look up, whenever you try to really look up the history on cavemen, it's very elusive. They really don't give you, exact dates. They'll give you billions of years ago, millions of years ago, because they know that this is a shameful history. So they figure they put it way billions and billions of years ago or millions of years ago. The average person, oh, that was way back then, when people were still crawling on all fours or whatever, So it's kind of hard finding information dealing with the cave dwellers. But nevertheless, the main point of this lesson is here: whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? So now when we look up this word habitation, let's deal first with habitation. The word habitation is the word yashab, which means to sit, to dwell, remain, sit, abide, to be inhabited. So their habitation, or where they dwell, right, is what? Whose habitation is high. And when you look up the word high, it's a compound word, marawam. Now the letter ma at the beginning of a word, if it's not connected to the word, is of or from, and the word rawam or rum means exalted, of or from exalted, marawam, which is height, elevation, elevated place, in a high place, height, proudly of nobles. So pretty much they have been set up in an elevated place. Their dwelling is in elevated places. And what are those elevated places? Well, today they call them skyscrapers, which it's a compound word which means to scrape the skies. In Spanish is rascacielos, which means to scratch the sky. And why did they call them skyscrapers? Because they were so high, it thought that they were actually scraping the sky. Because when you read the scriptures, you really not going to really find any building that was higher than 3 stories. The ark, when it was built, I believe it was 3 stories. There was a Solomon's house, I believe, was 3 stories. So there's really nothing that was really built higher than that except for the tower. And what happened to that Tower of Babel? The Lord destroyed it. Why? Because the Lord didn't want that. So these devils are really, putting, pretty much tempting the Lord, and this, and even though so-called 9/11 was planned, it was an inside job. You see what happens when people are too far up, and they get stuck because of a fire, whatever the case is. You see what happens in a case like that if your building is too high, And then there was a law that when you built your home on the roof, you would have these kind of like these gates that went around the edges, to keep people from falling off, What are you talking about, man? Pentecost still going on. Oh Lord. Anyway, I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to entertain that. So let's deal with this. Whose habitation is high? So earlier this morning, a thought came into mind. To type in what was the first country that erected skyscrapers. And I really knew what it was gonna say, but I said, let me just check just in case, because maybe there was another country where skyscrapers were first erected, right? And there were different websites that came up, but this is one of the ones that came up. First skyscraper, right? And I see this simple ass mother man. It says who? Home insurance building. What? First. Where? United States, Chicago. When? 1885. The world's first skyscraper was the Home Insurance Building in Chicago, erected in 1884 through 1885, the so-called father of the skyscraper, towered all of 10 stories. So this was a 10-story building, 10 floors, with its peak at 138 feet, miniature by today's standard, but gargantuan at that time. The architect, Major William LeBaron Jennings, incorporated a steel frame that supported not only the walls but the great weight of the entire building. The exterior, however, was made of brick. This technique spawned a new type of construction referred to as the Chicago skeleton. The landmark building did not last. It was demolished in 1931, which was ironically the year that the Empire State Building in New York was completed. Now check that out. So the year when this building in Chicago was destroyed was the same year that they erected the Empire State Building, because this is the Empire State. That's why it says the Empire Strikes Back. You know, so these devils are they like to play word games, you know. And New York is the the state flag has, I believe it has a woman on it, and at the bottom of it, I believe it has a ribbon. It says Excelsior, which means exalted, you know, because these devils are exalted. So on all levels, everything that when you look at Esau, the so-called white man, everything that they do goes back to what the scriptures say. There's some type of prophecy in it, you know, from the slogans that they use to the mannerisms that they have to how they like their food cooked, you know, to how they build their buildings, to how they have the eagle as their symbol, you know, the symbol of the so-called American symbol, whether they have it on the U.S. Post Office or whatever the case is. So on all levels, everything that the scriptures speak about of the prophecies of Esau, Edom, fits nobody else but the so-called white man. And then the Lord said that the last people that would be ruling on the planet would be who? Would be the Edomites. You know, Lord, so we can get that too. Now, this is something else that came up, early skyscrapers. And by the way, before I read any of this, when we come down here, this is a picture of that Chicago building, the home insurance building that was 10 stories high. When they first erected it, it was gargantuan, as they said, you know. But this was really a midget compared to the skyscrapers today. But you got to remember, back then, everything else was way down here. So everybody was like in awe and amazed at this back in 1885. And it wasn't until 1931, when it was demolished, that the Empire State Building was erected. Okay, so now let's go here. And it says the early skyscrapers were a range of tall commercial buildings built between 1884 and 1945, predominantly in the American cities of New York City and Chicago. See, so these were the two major cities where they were building skyscrapers. It didn't say Hong Kong, China. It didn't say Zimbabwe, Africa. It didn't say Barcelona, Spain. You know, it didn't say Mount Kilimanjaro, you know, or the Mojave Desert, or Dubai, or Kyrgyzstan, you know, or St. Peter's, what is it, St. Petersburg in Russia? What is that, St. Peter's something, you know, in Moscow? It didn't say Paris, you know, none of those places. It was in America. And there's a reason why these buildings were built in America, because this pretty much is modern day Basra. This today in America is also known as Edom, the capital city. You know, the capital city of Edom back then was Basra, you know. So America is that place. And these prophecies, when you look at them with a spiritual eye, you could see that everything surrounds these so-called white people, the Edomites. It says cities in the United States were traditionally made up of low-rise buildings. See, so that's why when they first set up this one in Chicago, it towered over all those small low-rise buildings. That's why they call it a skyscraper. But significant economic growth after the Civil War and increasingly intensive use of urban land encouraged the development of taller buildings. Beginning in the 1870s, technological improvements enabled the construction of fireproof iron-framed structures with deep foundations, equipped with the new inventions such as the elevator and electric lighting. These made it both technically and commercially viable to build a new class of taller buildings. So why did the Lord give them that technology? Because the scriptures say knowledge shall increase. It was mostly dealing with the knowledge of the internet, the information highway, but on all levels, because they had to fulfill prophecy. Remember, prophecy has to be fulfilled before the Lord can move to the next phase. So in building of this country, they took it from Gad. There was nothing here. They started building, buildings here and there, and eventually they started building skyscrapers. And you have it to where you have it today, 2020, the year of prophecy, where they have skyscrapers all over the place. For what? To fulfill prophecy. The first of which, Chicago's 138-foot, 42-meter tall home insurance building, opened in 1885. Their numbers grew rapidly, and by 1888, they were being labeled skyscrapers. See? So they were being labeled skyscrapers by 1888. And it says the skyscrapers are continuously habitable, whose what? Whose habitation is what? High. A skyscraper is a continuously habitable, high-rise building that has over 40 floors and is taller than 150 meters, 492 feet. Historically, the term first referred to buildings with 10 to 20 floors in the 1880s. The meaning shifted with advancing construction technology during the 20th century. Skyscrapers may host offices. All right. Let's see. I put these in the description box so you brothers can check it out when you get a chance. I'm not sure if there was anything else in here that I wanted to get. We already read about the first skyscraper, which was this building here, Chicago's home insurance building. And then let me see, what does it say? Early skyscrapers. Let me see. And if the Lord, if the Spirit allows, I'll do little research on the first, if the Spirit allows, on the other. When did the skyscrapers start being erected in different parts of the world? And you may say, why is this important? It's important because this is part of prophecy. This is part of prophecy. And the reason why these other nations are building their skyscrapers like they are, as we have a picture here of different skyscrapers in different parts of the world, is because they're following behind the whore. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. Jeremiah 17. I'm sorry, not Jeremiah. I don't know why I said Jeremiah. Revelation 17. And I started 1. Revelation 17:1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So there's a judgment coming for this whore that sitteth upon many waters, and the waters represent peoples, nations, multitudes, tongues, because this is the great melting pot. It says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. So all of these nations, beginning with their kings and nobles, their leaders, they committed fornication with America. And this is why you see them mimicking everything that America does here. So when you look at these skyscrapers, these are skyscrapers in different places around the world, But where did the first skyscraper come from? It came from America, which was that insurance building in Chicago, which was 10 floors high. But then it wasn't until 1888 that they started calling them skyscrapers, which means they're scraping the skies because they're so tall. See? So it says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. And when you look at these places now, See, the average person now wouldn't understand if they don't understand that history, because they're thinking that, especially people that were born, you know, within the 2000s, you know, they're thinking that all of these different high-rise buildings and skyscrapers all around the world were always there. That everybody was always building it. No, this was something that came later, you know, after Esau started doing that here in America, because the first two places was in New York and in Chicago. Chicago being the very first. All right. So it says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. And you look at these places, they look like New York. You know, they look like Chicago. It says, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. And that's one of the reasons why the Lord is going to judge these nations too, because they follow behind this whore. You know, so like I said, that was just something I wanted to, you know, I have typed that up earlier. What where would what country were the first skyscrapers erected in, or something along those lines? And it came up as America, of course. You know, and I'm, like I said, I'm not sure what year the other nations started building their skyscrapers, but this is more proof that Esau is the so-called white man. So let's read this again. The pride of thine heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. So the cavemen are who? Esau, whose habitation is high. Look at their skyscrapers. It says, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Because they never think that they're going to be brought down. But the Lord said that Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. It says, though thou exalt thyself as an eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, which their symbol is the eagle, and they have set their nest among the stars, because they have these different so-called space stations. It says, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. And from the point back in 69, when they so-called went to the moon, because they didn't go to the moon, from that point on, that's when America really started to fall hard. Because prior to that, you know, you had the Great Depression, which were really hard times, but they built back up from that, you know, and they were prospering up until the mid to late 60s, when you started seeing all of this stuff taking place, you know. And Shalom Apostle Tar, yeah, he said anyone teaching that Babylon the Great is Vatican City is an asshole. That's right. You know, it says, thence will I bring thee down, save the Lord. So from that point on until now, you know, this place has been crumbling, falling, you know, and we're here 2020, the year of prophecy, and we're witnessing, you know, the new world order pretty much encompassing, you know, the four corners of the earth, because the great whore has put her clutches and her venom and that Babylonian juice upon all these different nations, because all of these nations, the leaders of these nations, had to agree to this in order for it to make it work. You know, this COVID-19 and the masks, you know, and the vaccines and all that. It's a combined effort from all of these different nations. But bigger than that, it's all prophecy. You know, so I just wanted to commit that to video. Like I said, I left some of these in the description box. So with that, you know, I pray that your brothers have been edified. And to the next time I say, Shalom.